Amid acute grief, trauma, PTSD, and funerals, AI 171 has flown again on the same route from Ahmedabad to London. And what's more, while some armchair commentators may be looking to unfairly trash the airline, its pilots, and its cabin crew, at least one passenger who was scheduled to travel and fly on that ill fated flight on that very day showed his confidence by taking the same flight again. Ramji told the Times of India that he trusted God and the airline. But meanwhile, there are disturbing and sad accounts that are emerging from within the airline and across the aviation industry of trauma, of severe post traumatic stress disorder, of a loss of morale, of uncertainty and anxiety about the future within the Air India community. This, even as the norms require that within the first 30 days, there should be the findings of a preliminary investigation placed on record. The big question now is, what does Boeing know? And should Boeing be talking more, not just to Air India and to Indians, but to aviation industry across the world? Because after all, 1,200 787 Boeing Dreamliners are deployed by different airlines. It isn't just Air India. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. These images are haunting us. At least personally for me, I did not know Captain Sumeet Sabharwal, but every time I see the photograph of him smiling, and that smiling photograph was placed on his casket, it fills me with waves of sadness. Funerals have now begun to take place for other members of the cabin crew of Air India 171. There you can see the body of cabin crew member Sainita Chakravarti coming home to Juhu in Mumbai, her family breaking down in tears and disbelief. That is Captain Sumeet's ailing father receiving his body as it came home for last rites. There is an unspeakable sorrow, a collective trauma, and people are dealing with it in different ways. Some with fear, some with panic, some with anger, some with denialism, and some with unfortunately mocking the airline and seeking to blame the pilots. Thankfully, that narrative has been reset. There is now an increasing convergence among most aviation experts that for reasons that we still don't understand, there was a dual engine failure on Air India 171. The question now is, doesn't Boeing have some kind of real time data? And shouldn't Boeing be issuing some sort of emergency directive, as it once did when it had a problem on this very plane with its batteries? A lot to talk about. Let me introduce our guests on the program today as we try and tell you what we know, what we can rule out, and what we absolutely still do not know. I want to welcome aerospace engineer Dr. Aditya Paranjape to the program. He was one of the first to say that Prima Facie there was no pilot error. This at a time when certain TV channels were platforming a pilot in a TikTok star called Captain Steve, who sought to blame the pilots. He too has reversed his original argument. Thank you, Dr. Paranjape. Also joining us is Captain Minoo Wadia. He's, of course, been a founder president of the FIP and a former captain, a senior commander with Air India. And he has been talking on our platform about the problem with bureaucrats being tasked to inquire what has happened, and also how safety culture will not change unless experts are involved. And finally, of course, we have back with us Dr. Augustine, Group Captain Augustine. It was his birthday yesterday, his anniversary today. Amidst this moment of sorrow and grief and loss, I think we must hang on to the moments of life and little celebration that we can. So many happy returns and happy anniversary to you, sir, because I really believe that these crashes reinforce the value of life and our need for us to hold on to our happy moments as deeply as we can. Welcome everybody to the program. Let me actually start with you, Group Captain. What can we, without getting into speculation and blame game and trying to address issues with responsibility, what can we rule out, and what is there some sort of narrative taking shape now on what we know? I think there seems to be near unanimity that both engines have most likely failed or flamed out. The reasons for that are being debated. Is that a theory that you're willing to go with, or do you still have other assessments?
In fact, when the crash happened, the first program I came on was yours, Barkha, and then I
Yes.
went to others. And since that time, I've been saying this: the loss of lift is the final reason for crash.
Yeah.
Absolutely no doubt about that in anybody's mind. If the aeroplane stalled into the ground. Now
Yeah.
the reasons for stall, like I was saying on your program, is a loss of lift per se because of lift augmentation devices malfunctioning and or engine malfunction. So these are combination or individual contribution of both, and which I've been saying only the air crash investigation team would be able to put their finger on. But
Hmm.
when we listen to that noise or the hum of the video which was taken from from by an amateur, you
Yeah.
can clearly make out two things in that. One is that propeller sound, which rat generates, and for people who are watching this program probably for the first time, I mean, let me take 10 seconds to explain rat.
Mm-hmm.
The full form of rat is ram air turbine. It it deploys either automatically or manually. Automatically, it deploys when you have a dual hydraulic or a dual electrical or a dual engine failure. So aim of the rat is to give you quickly the electrical supply and a hydraulic supply if you want
Yeah.
it, else electrical alone or hydraulic alone, and that possibility also exists. And in case of dual engine failure, in any case, you will need both of them for controls as well as for the computers, because these aeroplanes are run by computers, fly by wire. What fly by wire means, everything that you do in the cockpit or anywhere else is converted into an electrical impulses. It goes to the computer, which weighs against other parameters and gives adequate controlled response to the controls. Sometimes
Hmm.
it does it automatically, most of the times it does it automatically, and sometimes it does it as per your demand. So it is not like a direct linkages that we had when you pulled and pushed the stick or yoke, the control moved on it, I mean, based on your input. No, your input is
Hmm.
also kind of a demand to the computer, and that is very very important, Barka, because when I heard this hum going down, you can clearly make out, apart from the propeller hum, the engine also probably is running at a lower power or winding down slowly. It is a combination of noise
Mm-hmm.
that you hear. It is not like you said about that TikTok star who later on reversed his
I mean,
opinion.
he basically blamed the pilots for making a manual error in the lever that they chose, and he based it on nobody knows what he based it on.
Absolutely. And another thing, very important thing in that video, that amateur video which was taken from a terrace, is the
Yeah,
position of the wheel. The
yeah,
bogie wheel of 787 Barca, when I looked at it maybe 100 times, the
yeah.
bogie wheel of a 787, the moment you put the gear up, and I've been saying this I mean, since day one until date, is I am yet to come. I must have trained as an instructor over 350, 400 pilots in my life, and most of them
Hmm.
walked into the aircraft without knowing what stick does and what throttle does. Young children, I've trained all of them. So I'm yet to come across from those young children to any umpteen number of pilots who went for the flap lever first, and they are in different position. And for the sake of viewers, I say this: it is one is in front panel and one is on your side. I have never come across some. You are itching as a pilot. You are itching to
Yeah,
put the gear up because you want that rocket-like thrust. Now, if you look at that image, when you put the gear up of the bogie wheel, Barka,
yeah,
when you take off, the bogie wheel is up like this. The nose of the bogie wheel is up. But the moment you put your gear up, the nose of the bogie wheel falls down, comes down, and then the gear folds into the fuselage. You can
hmm.
clearly make out that the nose of the bogie wheel has come down. Pilot has put the gear up, and
Yeah,
this malfunction of electrical malfunction is what the theory that I want to go by, has happened after the gear has been put up, contrary to common belief. That is point number one. Point number two, this winding down of the engine. Barkha, I mean, I'm just sticking my neck out and saying it is most probably something to do with the engine computer, electrical issues. This aircraft has had electrical malfunction in the past 787 fleet per se. This particular aircraft, if you remember the previous traveler who put up a video blog saying this is not working, that is not working,
Yeah.
again, willy-nilly pointing towards electrical issues. So
Hmm.
this is currently has been my stand and currently is my stand. And
I want
many
to,
a
I want
times,
to, I want to play up. There's an enhanced. I want to say this is enhanced audio video. It is not how the original video was recorded. It's been enhanced on a computer. So let me make that very clear. It had to be enhanced to pick up or try and pick up some of the sound signals that Group Captain is referring to. I'm just going to play that up and then come back to the panel. Right. Before I go to Captain Wadia, you want to say something about what we hear there quickly, Group Captain?
yeah, see, if the propeller tip of a rat is almost supersonic. So you can make out that racket that rat makes. And rat Barkha is rotating two things. One, it is rotating a huge generator which is generating a lot of power required for the fly-by-wire aeroplane, electrical power. And those are
Yeah.
essential electrical power. This power does not go to your video systems and audio systems. No, these are
Hmm.
essential power required for umpteen number of essential computers that is running this aeroplane. Secondly, this rat also is producing 3000 psi, pounds per square inch of hydraulic power required for actuating the control surfaces with which you see till last. I mean, I tweeted about it also. Till last moment, Captain Sumeet is trying to save everyone and anyone
Yeah.
in that particular. He never gave up till the impact. You can make out he's continuously trying to get out of that situation and get people out of that situation. I really
Yeah.
salute to him and hats off to him for the kind of courage he showed under pressure and in the imminent danger of death staring at him.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because it is now emerging from his friends within Air India. In fact, even the condition in which his body was recovered actually showed, according to people I've been talking to, that till the very last moment he was just holding on somehow to try and divert first that aircraft away from a three-story building, then away from BG Medical College. But the tail of the aircraft gets in those 30 seconds, 32 seconds odd that he has, which really turns down to be a 15 odd second window for him. He's trying his damnedest to save the plane, save lives in the air, save lives on the ground. So heart really goes out to him. I want to bring in Captain Wadia now. Captain Wadia, once again, let me just ask my question, then we can open the mic. Captain Wadia, you say everything is still possible. You're not convinced that anything can be ruled out. A prima facie investigation report has to be submitted within 30 days, right? If I'm not wrong. What will that be based on then, if everything is still open?
First of all, the prima facie objectives, when they come out with it, will be based on some facts. Either they'll see the cockpit voice recorder, that hear it properly, they'll have some facts from the DFDR. So it has to be based on some facts that you know. See, unfortunately, why I keep on saying that there's no point in speculating what Dr. He said just now also, it is absolutely possible. It's also possible you may have multiple bird hits. It's possible it could be sabotage. It could be possible that the fuel lines may have ruptured. Anything is possible. So therefore, by our trying to speculate what could have happened, we are unnecessarily putting fear into the people who watch these TVs and would get upset that this could have happened or that could have happened. Let us keep the facts as they are right now and focus on how to prevent. After all, what is extremely important for us to know what is all this based on is ICAO's Annexure 13. The preamble of ICAO Annexure 13 says very clearly the aim of an investigation is to prevent a recurrence. and not to apportion blame. Unfortunately, in India, most of the investigations that have taken place have focused more on the who's to blame and who's to where the problem is, etc., but not to improve and prevent a recurrence. That is the essential part. That's why I keep on saying this.
Okay.
And if you
Go
want me
ahead.
to go further, I'll elaborate, but we'll do it later.
Yeah, we'll come to how this can be prevented. Let's first stay to what we think we know, what we think we can rule out. Dr. Paranjape, you were amongst the first, along with Group Captain, to make the point that this was not looking from any angle like pilot error. Since you spoke about the takeoff being normal, there was some sort of debate on why the plane had taken the entire stretch of the runway to take off. But we had another pilot who has actually flown exactly this route, exactly this plane, and he spoke about the load being very high, the heat being, the temperatures being very high, and how it was typical for him to have used the full stretch, that didn't give him any warning signs. That's what Captain Manmat Rotre was explaining on this program. I want to bring you in on what you think. There's one question, a technical question I have. There are those who are saying that Boeing has a health management system that actually receives real-time data from all of its aircraft, and it is actually called, and I think we have a shot of it somewhere as well. It is called an airline health management system, and Boeing now has a 2.0 version of this. This is what their website actually shows you. There is some sort of questions around, what does Boeing know? Wouldn't Boeing already know something from this monitoring system? What do you say to that, Dr. Paranjape?
Okay. Thanks, Barkha. So first off, let me admit that I don't know much about how the health management system works. I'm familiar with health management systems that are located, or health monitoring systems rather, that are located on board airplanes. They are fairly common. If this is a system that sits outside, in the sense that it allows for real time or sort of sporadic data transfer from the airplane to the ground, that's something I'm not aware of. So I really wouldn't know about this particular system. Moving back a little bit to something that, I must first off admit there's a lot I learned from Group Captain Vinod.
Yeah.
But there's one thing I must add here. So loss of thrust is something I think we can all agree on. The point about loss of lift is something that at least on the basis of preliminary calculation, do not think very likely, because for a stall to occur, I think I explained this sort of very early on, that stall is very different from just the airplane falling. So if I can again go back to my little airplane here, just to illustrate what goes on. Look, the lift on this airplane depends on two things. It depends on the flight speed. In fact, to be precise, on the square of the flight speed, and it depends on how the airplane's oriented with respect to the wind. If the orientation becomes very steep, the flow starts to separate over the wings, and that's what causes a stall. Your lift can go down also because of loss in speed. That's absolutely possible. But a stall can be extremely drastic. In the sense that the kind of
could you explain the difference to those who don't fly? Could you explain the difference between thrust and lift?
Okay, so
because isn't thrust what allows the plane to lift? I'm sorry if I'm asking a silly question.
That's fine. No,
but isn't thrust what allows the plane to lift?
No, it's not a silly question to start with. Okay, let's rule that out. It's a fairly proper question to ask. So thrust is produced by the engines. Okay, so if I were to just think of this airplane in flight, just as a quick 1-minute primer on basic physics, if the plane's flying straight and level, you need all forces to be balanced. So what does the airplane experience? Weight down. It's balanced by lift, which acts upwards. And as the airplane flies, think of it as friction from the air. It's called drag technically. So there's drag that's trying to slow the plane down. And all the thrust is doing is that it's balancing drag and thereby helping the airplane maintain its flight speed. What's maintaining lift is that flight speed and the way the wings are oriented with respect to the incoming flow. So they are typically at an angle, a very small angle at that, about 7 to 8 degrees is what you should expect to see. That is what produces this lift, right?
Okay.
Now, when
I Group Captain wanted to make an interjection briefly, and then I'll let you complete your point. Are you wanted to say something, Group Captain?
Yeah, just so that our viewers understand what Mr. Paranjape is talking about. I'll just pose a question. I'm assuming, Barkha, you are the viewer.
Yeah.
Let me just pose this question to you.
Yeah.
It's a 225-ton aeroplane.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
227-ton aeroplane.
Yeah.
Okay, you are the viewer.
Yeah.
What do you think should be the thrust? More than 227, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then only
Commonsensically, I would say yeah. Commonsensically, as
it's
a layperson, I would say yeah.
yeah. But that's what Paranjape is trying to explain. The thrust is only 35 tons.
I
Thrust
see.
is extremely small because these
I
airplanes
see.
are very
Because
aerodynamic.
see, it is the vector that he is talking about. The forward thrust needs
Yeah.
to just balance what is pulling it rearwards, which is
Yeah.
drag.
Yeah.
The aeroplane's lift, which is given by the wings, is
Yeah.
the one which actually lifts the wing.
Got
Now,
it.
yeah, and for a lay person to understand,
Yeah.
if the nose is this, Barkha, if this is the nose
Yeah.
and this is the path, then the path and the nose position is called the angle of attack, which is very minimal when he took off. When he took off, you see his nose is like this and he's flying also like this.
Right.
But at the time of crash, his nose is still like this. But he's flying like this. Now this is the path.
Yeah. Yeah.
You make out the difference. So look at this. From path being like this, path became like this. The nose position is not changed.
Yeah.
So when the path goes like this, the angular difference between the flight path and the position of the nose is called the angle of attack, which rapidly increases. And
Right.
in an aeroplane, which is fly-by-wire, I mean, I do this often in the simulator.
Yeah.
And Air France 447 is a beautiful example where in this particular aeroplane, fly-by-wire aeroplane, they do not exhibit any classical stall symptom. The nose does not go down.
So
The
hang
wing
on,
does not
hang
go-
on. What you're saying is just before I go back to Aditya, you're saying it is possible for the lift that when there is small thrust, the lift is impacted without the stall showing. Am I summarizing this correctly?
Yes.
No, I'm not. Okay, you
You
think I
are.
am. Okay.
No,
Aditya thinks I'm not.
I'm saying the
Yeah.
stall in a
Yeah.
fly-by-wire aeroplane
Yes.
is not a classical sense stall in which
Understood.
the nose falls
It
down
would that
or
it would
wing.
not look like a classic stall. It would not
Oh, yeah,
manifest as a classic stall.
yeah.
Aditya, I'll take it back to you now to let you complete
All
your
right.
point.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's a point. I mean, I think look, for a stall, maybe we shouldn't make this too technical because there's other point here, which is that these planes don't just have flaps; they have leading edge slats, and slats increase the stall angle appreciably, and I really mean appreciably. If the wing stalls at between 12 to 15 degrees angle of attack, with slats, that number is going to shoot between 20 and 25, depending on how the slats are oriented. But look, I think that point can be safely skipped for now. The thing that we ought to agree on right now is the fact that the engine failed. I think that is a given. Because the other thing I also looked at that time, if you remember, Barkha, was the flight path. We looked at, for example, we talked about numbers. We talked about the descent rate of the airplane. We talked about the descent rate that this airplane would have had it just been gliding. That is to say, the engines had been fully off. We talked about the ideal descent rate, which is what you get when the engines are powered and the airplane's fully in control. So those were the calculations that led us to talk about engine failure as a very high probability. Now, one thing I must point out, because this has kind of just come up in some conversations, is engine failure and engine shutdown. And I will draw a line there and just say that I'm only talking about engine failure. I'm not necessarily alluding to shutdown. I say this not as an academic matter, but as a point where if anyone here, I mean, I suppose the panelists would be familiar with BA Flight 38. This was the British Airways flight that crashed just prior. I mean, it was on a regular approach. The engines failed, and I use the word failed here, not shut down. They failed, and the airplane crashed because there wasn't enough thrust. What happened at that point was the engines were still running, just that they didn't have enough fuel flow rate because the fuel lines had effectively clogged because of ice. But the engines were still running, and what that did. Now here's the point that's not academic. Because the engines were still running, and because there was still fuel flow, it meant that there was nothing wrong with the fueling system. I mean, okay, the fuel had clogged, of course, but the electrical system was working just fine. The engine control system was working just fine, and that helped focus that investigation on the fuel line.
Right.
So,
So,
so what's
yeah,
so if I
sorry.
may just complete what might happen here in this particular investigation is they might want to look at and see, okay, maybe the engine's winding down, as the group captain correctly said. It's not going to shut down in a second, but what they're going to want to see is the engine still trying to operate? Is it idling? Is there a fuel flow rate that's appreciable, if not what would be ideally desired? And that is going to probably give them the first clue as to whether this
Okay.
is a case of, okay, anyhow, all right, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I'll just take that to group captain and then to Captain Wadia, because I want to. Nobody has actually addressed my question about what Boeing might already know, and I don't ask this in a fear mongering way. I'm just asking genuinely: would there be data in that airplane health management monitoring system, real time data? I am told that GE also monitors its engines in real time, that there would already be pretty significant clues as to what has happened. And the question that's being asked is, if so, if you remember when the Dreamliners had a battery problem, there was a directive issued till the planes could be fixed. Should there be such a directive? And the reason I'm asking this is because 1,200 Dreamliners are deployed around the world. You can, a section of our public can judge Air India, but what are they going to do? Even the rich who are leaving for foreign shores are flying 787 on Virgin Atlantic or Boeing, or many of the Middle East countries also. This is a very, very popular and commonly deployed aircraft. So here's my question: what do you think GE, Boeing, etc. might already have in terms of data? Group captain.
Barkha,
Yeah.
first and foremost is the amount of data that these aeroplanes gathers, whether from the engines or from the very umpteen number of computers, is so humongous it cannot be transmitted live. That is the amount of throughput that is required to transmit such a
Yeah.
huge data. I don't think exists as of now, and there is no probably requirement as well. But having said that, now there are certain event data. For example, Barkha is going from here to New York, and halfway through, in the middle of nowhere, one of the engine is giving some trouble, which you also didn't know. Sometimes even that trouble may not even require a pilot's attention, but that event data is pushed down using something called an ACARS to the company. It has happened with me many times that the engineer was waiting with the replacement part of a particular part of the aeroplane, which I didn't even know failed in my aeroplane when I was flying. So this event data is what that is transmitted downwards, so that the spares are kept ready and the aeroplane is kept flying. Got the point? So this event data is not a proprietary data. But Barkha, rest of a lot of data is a proprietary data. For two reasons it is proprietary. Firstly, if it is so open that I can download it, then by the state, suppose, or any company, there, I'm not saying in this case, I'm saying generally, how will I, original equipment manufacturer will look at it. If there is a possibility to tamper with it, he will not let you do so. Therefore, a lot of data, only the Boeing will be able to milk it out. But there is the second catch. If Boeing can milk it out, the same yardstick now applies to Boeing as well. But any company worth its salt, has it done it in the past? No. Will Boeing try to hide anything that has gone wrong? I do not think so, because there is so much that they have to answer to the state.
It's just that, sorry to interrupt you, but it's just that, and Captain Wadia has his hand up, it's just that there's some skepticism around Boeing only because of the kind of testimonies that its own CEO has placed before the US Senate, acknowledging missteps. There have been whistleblower accounts. So people have this fear. But you believe that it is too big, the stakes are too high, there are too many aircraft in the world, too many airlines. There is the TFTR, what's called the black box, the CVR, and the answers will come. That this will not be buried, it cannot be buried. Captain Wadia, go ahead, sir. You had your hand up.
Sir, and before you ask me your next question, let me elaborate on it. Whom are we doing this interview for? For the benefit of our viewers, for their understanding in what is happening, etc. Now, you do not want to have a fear psychosis in the whole world all of a sudden that this is what
Sure.
happened and that's what happened. And I'll endorse what Group Captain Vinod is also saying, that the DFDR, when it is on the ground, it takes a couple of weeks for the data to be downloaded, and then also it's in digital format, etc. And after it's being downloaded, it takes a couple of weeks to elaborate and calculate and understand what this data means and to interpret this data. So just jumping to conclusion at this stage is unnecessarily causing fear psychosis and people's apprehension, people's minds. I'll give you another example. I've been getting circulars today which are coming out on your media that this is what happened, and with specifics. The DGCA is saying this by order number so and so, by CAR number so and so, and this is what happened. It is totally ridiculous. All these are generated, which are fake messages and unnecessarily frightening people. In fact, if I tell you what I've got recently also, that the seat broke and the pilot came back and the DGCA has said this by order number so and so and by CA number so and so, making it seem as if it's authentic, but the whole thing is totally rubbish. So please relax and don't jump to conclusions unnecessarily. Okay, now I'll wait for your question.
No, I think that's a very important point. How to have a conversation about what's happened without fear-mongering, causing panic, causing anxiety. Let's start with last comments. Captain Wadia, I want to start with you because one of the things you focused on is too many bureaucrats in the picture, not enough specialists. And you've said that this has gone on now for decades in your experience. Let's start there and then I'll take last comments. I'll start with you, Captain Wadia.
Okay. The very fact that you said about bureaucrats understanding, I'll give you one example straight away, that they're not capable of understanding details of aviation safety. After the Chakri-Dadri mid-air collision that took place, one of the two things which I had recommended immediately is ask all airlines to put their transponder switch on. Now, today, everyone understands what a transponder switch is. In those days, people didn't, because you didn't have any reference to the ATC, etc., etc. So it took me almost 2 years to convince the DGCA, and why it should be left on, I can go into it, but I'll unnecessarily be wasting everyone's time. But it took almost 2 years for the DGCA to understand what I was talking about. And eventually, when it came out in a very riff-raff manner, ordering, just giving a letter to everyone that keep the switch on. However, at the same time, Jet Airways pilots invited me to give them a seminar. And they had the senior examiners, check pilots, etc. And I asked them, do you put the transponder switch on? They said, no, we don't. What for? It's not necessary. So I explained to them. It took me a couple of minutes only. And they said, yes, immediately from tomorrow, all pilots will leave the transponder switch on. So that is why I am saying that bureaucrats are not capable of understanding technicalities of aviation. So there is no two ways about that.
So do you believe the DGCA needs to be headed by a specialist and not by, I mean, that's a larger debate, but in a way you're saying this inquiry, the conversations around it, the circulars, there have to be technical people involved. Of course, the DGCA also has pilots and experts on secondment. I should say that it's not only bureaucrats. But I take your larger point. Aditya, I think Captain Wadia is saying, look, if we get into the weeds of this, people who don't understand this, who don't fly, are going to, the fear of flying. How are you going to remind people that flying is still the safest mode of transport, notwithstanding this terrible crash, notwithstanding what's happened in Kedarnath, which is a different kind of situation with choppers. Your last thoughts, Aditya?
Okay. So first off, let's look at the facts. Statistically, air travel is the safest. I mean, anyone can pull up the statistics of air accidents versus any other form of accidents in any other means. Secondly, let's also not forget that this crash has attracted so much attention because it is well and truly rarest of the rare. Let's also not fail to give credit to airlines and the airliners. The fact that Boeing safely flew 1 billion passengers without a single major incident, a single fatality, a single hull loss, already speaks a lot about how safe our systems are. Look, we've been talking about electrical systems, we've been talking about fuel systems and whatnot, but let's not forget they come with massive amounts of redundancy. And okay, you can have these, as you called them, Barkha, last time, a black swan event. Yeah, those black swan events do happen. It's
Can I
unfortunate.
read out? Can I read out a data point? According to the 2023 annual safety report, our producers have just pulled this out. There were approximately 37 million aircraft movements worldwide, with only one accident for every 1.26 million flights. Group Captain, wanted to add a correction there or an update?
No, to put it very simply for our viewers, these are numbers. Sometimes it can go
Yeah,
way beyond
yeah,
people's head.
yeah.
It is 61 times riskier to travel on a train and 225 times riskier to travel on a car than flying in an aeroplane. Over to you.
Say that again. 61 times riskier to fly to. Say that again.
Travel in a train and
That's so
225 times riskier to travel on a car. If you continue to travel in a car, one day you will surely meet with an accident. There is no. And motorcycle,
Yeah.
I think you should write your will before you sit on it.
Well, I hope nobody's having to write their wills, but this is a really important and easily accessible data point. Go ahead, Aditya. I'll let you complete your point, then very quickly to Group Captain for the closing
Right.
comment. Aditya,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I think that is what people have to bear in mind. Also, at some point, don't forget that when an accident such as this happens, even as we try and find what's gone wrong, believe me, even if people may have their own opinions about Boeing, about Air India, at the end of the day, everybody functions on the same team. Everybody's trying to make this whole system safer. And in
Yeah.
fact, aviation now is far safer than it has ever been before. Look, Boeing 787s have had one hull loss. This is the first hull loss on the 787.
Yeah.
777s have had a few, but these numbers are way smaller than what you saw in the old days on the 747s or the 737s.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
as a community, we've learned over the years. So yes, it's natural to feel afraid. We are all humans. We all respond, emotionally to these events, especially with social media. There are a lot of things that float around.
Yeah.
But I would simply tell people, look at the statistics. Numbers do not lie.
Yeah, I think we're all agreed on this. Group Captain, just a quick closing comment to you. Where does it go from here? Where should it go from here? And I think Captain Wadia's point, involve the experts, involve the specialists, is a really important one. I can't hear Group Captain. You're muted, sir, at your end.
See, Barkha, because so much of focus is there, and the first hull loss, like Aditya covered, so much
Yeah.
of focus there on this accident. I would say about in a fortnight we should get a preliminary report as to what went wrong. The complete accident investigation will take time because there is insurance involved. People on ground have perished. Their insurance is involved, so it will take time. But
Yeah.
what happened, we should know in 15 days to maximum 20 days. Over to you.
Okay, we leave it there. In fact, with the statistical clarity provided by our panel, we should also say for Air India, the last time there was a hull loss of a wide-bodied aircraft was more than 40 years ago, if I remember this correctly. So it is important to put all of this in context, even as we seek answers to the questions that are natural, but must be asked with responsibility. Captain Wadia?
Yes. See, we've been focusing on speculative things. I wanted to specifically, if you give me 3 minutes only, what is the prevention? How we can prevent accidents from happening in India specifically? All right. Okay. Specifically, first of all, you need a training of accident analysis specialists, not just pilots or senior pilots, but pilots, engineers, whoever, who are trained in accident analysis. Now, these people should be doing the investigation. And there should be a number of people, even in the airlines, depending on the number of aircrafts on the airlines. And these people should be doing not just accident investigation, they should be monitoring daily operations. And what is most important, which no one is ever referring to, is investigating incidents. Incidents are minor in nature, something like a dog crossing the runway or something which has not hurt anyone, nothing has got damaged. But incidents need to be investigated thoroughly and acted upon immediately. And the third thing I would like to elaborate, but unfortunately for time's sake, the third most important thing is education. We need a tremendous amount of education of all pilots are taught how to fly an aircraft. They go regularly into simulators, all sorts of examinations, etc. But tell me, who teaches a pilot how to be a commander? So there's a lot of things which come into education, and you can elaborate, and I can talk for hours on this subject, but these are the three things which require attention.
Okay, thank you for that. I will just say as an urging to people to be more responsible in your commentary. Imagine for a moment, God forbid it should ever happen, but imagine for a moment that somebody you loved or cared for, someone in your family, perished in a car accident. How long would it take you to smoothly get back on the road again? Air India's pilots and cabin crew were flying within not just hours. They were trying to fly within like minutes of this crash having happened. And there are very, very sad and disturbing accounts coming out of real PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, trauma, grief. The Air India helpline, somebody was telling me that the people who were managing those helplines have now sort of had mental health issues of their own. And all of these are human beings. We focus so much on the machine, we forget the human beings. So please do not forget the human beings at the heart of this tragedy. That's all I would say. Thank you so much, Captain Wadia, to Dr. Aditya Paranjape and Group Captain Augustine. Namaskar, thank you, and always a pleasure. We leave you now with the unending sorrow that is coming now from the funerals that are taking place one after the other. Thank you for watching. Take care.
आप कैसे जानती थी मैम?
मैं कैबिन क्रू थी। आपने कैप्टन सबरवाल के साथ बहुत बार फ्लाई किया था। बड़ा बीबा बच्चा था, बहुत जल्दी चला गया। Miss him, such a wonderful soul.
You have traveled with him
Many times. We have walked together many times, eaten meals together many times, served him vegetarian meal many times.
How was he?
Wonderful soul, such a pure soul, left us soul.
Also, we see videos on internet where it is seen that he tried his best to land the flight in
Of course, no doubt, very skilled pilot. Of course, no doubt.
Take care, ma'am. Take care. Captain Sumeet Sabharwal.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.